welcome, Jade. Would you like to introduce yourself to the viewers and just let them know a bit about what you do and where you're from?
Yes, so hello everyone, my name's Jade. I am the founder of STEAM School. STEAM School is a virtual academy for future inventors, engineers and tech entrepreneurs. We're based in the UK. That's where the vast majority of our students and teachers live and kind of go to school. But we do have some international learners as well, and actually looking to expand out in so many different parts of the world. And yes, it's very exciting. So that's me, and that's what we do.
Amazing. Thank you for being here today, Jade. I think it's also great to have a woman talking about STEAM. So thank you so much for making this space for these geNEOusChats.
You're most welcome.
I was trying to figure out, Jade, about your, what led you into it. It's funny because you look at somebody's LinkedIn profile and you try and connect the dots. You're like, what, but obviously it doesn't tell the story. So
No.
I'm really curious to know about what led you into this and what made you think this is something I want to dedicate my time and my passion and my energy to.
Yeah. So I can actually pinpoint the very, very start of my STEAM school journey. And it was almost an accident, really. I had a really, really successful career in the tech sector. Worked for small entrepreneurial brands. I worked latterly for British Telecom. Had a brilliant career, went off traveling, came back home and set up my own business because I naively thought that was the best way to control my day and not to have to travel so much, which I'd done previously. And actually that business was brilliant, but again, I was traveling a lot. I was working really hard, and my mum was a head teacher, stepdad was a teacher, grew up all around these, people working in education. And my mum said to me, Jade, I really think you should think about going into teaching. I'd come back home to Liverpool, didn't have a great social life because I was working all the time. And she said, you've really enjoyed some mentoring. I'd done some mentoring with Young Enterprise. Why don't you go and take a look at this school that's opening in Liverpool? So it was one of the first Tony Blair academies. So I applied for a job there, which I could do maybe 10% of the job description. That was it. Kind of blagged my way through an interview. And at the end, wrote to the head teacher and said, I know that job isn't quite for me, but I really think that I've got something wonderful that I can contribute. And Kay she was just a wonderful boss, and so she made a job up for me, really. That's what she did. So I became the director of enterprise, and my job was to go into this school, really, really deprived community, 5th generation worklessness, and to create a culture of entrepreneurship with our students, with our teachers, and with the community. So not very long after starting that job, it was a Friday afternoon. From my previous role, one of my suppliers from British Telecom had invited me to the Henley Regatta. And so I had a ball gown in my car, but my Friday afternoon was spent on the V streets of Anfield. So if anybody's been to a match at Liverpool Football Club, there are, at that time, and I think it's still the same, there are boarded up terraces everywhere. And it's very grim and dismal and feels, you can see where the deprivation comes from when you're there. And then I drove down to the Henley Regatta and I was like, oh my gosh, like how could these two worlds be so different? And how did I, somebody who came from Liverpool, end up in a job where going to the Henley Regatta was a normal thing? What's different about my experience to the children that I was working with? So right from that moment, I thought, right, I've met some brilliant people. I've had fantastic role models. I've had fantastic mentors. That is what I'm going to do in my role in education. So that's where my journey started. I worked in Anfield for a couple of years, still the best job I've ever had. I then went on to be a deputy head of another school. After I had my son, I came back to Kay, my original head teacher, and she asked me to set up a life sciences school. And just because for some reason I thought it was a good idea, and it was a good idea, I said I'd like to open a school for video gamers as well. And she was like, sure, because she was a bit bonkers. So she went, yeah, just go for it. Absolutely. And none of the men around us thought that we would get either school. Like, they were all like, those two women are mad. What are they doing? And lo and behold, not only did we get the life sciences school, but we got the gaming school as well. So absolutely brilliant. I got to work with all of these fantastic gaming entrepreneurs who had their businesses within a 5-minute walking distance of our school. We had and they were in all the time, and that's what real life was like in our school. It was brilliant, just this melting pot of creativity, entrepreneurs, people, everybody getting stuck in. And I remember one day we had Wired in, a journalist from Wired, the big tech magazine here in the UK, came in. And he came in on a Thursday, and he said to me, have you just made this day up for me? Like, because all these people were coming in and out. And I said, no, this is what our school looks like. This is what our school's like every day. Admittedly, Thursdays were always a bit madder than others, but that's what our day was like. And so again, what I learned from our students at the video gaming school was the power of live streaming. Never heard of it before. They were setting up all these live streaming clubs. I was like, oh, this is interesting. So when I left with a view to setting up my own business, all of that kind of melting pot of ideas and experiences came together. I wanted to be able to showcase and present really exciting role models to children. I wanted to be able to give them a new perspective about how science and technology was changing our world. I wanted to then feel like they had a part as well in leading that change. So we started off from my bedroom, a little corner of my bedroom, broadcasting. First ones were an absolute disaster. I should have never carried on after those first pilots, but I did. And here we are 3 years later. We've got a great community of schools. We've got an EdTech platform, and lots of exciting stuff in development. So that's a very long answer to your question, but that's how I got where I am today.
Yeah. Wow, that's very inspiring. I can relate to the very beginning from what you mentioned, traveling a lot, getting your company started 4 years ago, saying, you know what, it's your own time. And you actually get to work maybe twice that you normally work, having a role that is within a company, right? Being an employee, but it's extremely rewarding. So I really like hearing about your journey, Jade, and I'm pretty sure many of the people around you have just been absolutely inspired by that. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah. Can I ask you, Jade, about the there's one thing you mentioned quite a lot is future skills, and so you've come in with all these experiences and these influences, and you've seen the power of inspiring and elevating people by showing them, like, this is a path forward, this is who you can be, here's somebody you might be able to relate to, and all of that. But in terms of the applicability, I mean, a lot of talk around STEAM in particular is about getting ready for the world ahead. I mean, what do you see as kind of future skills? Why does STEAM provide that? And what is it about the world that lies ahead of us that you think this is all going to become relevant?
Okay. So I've talked about this morning. So the first example that I always share with people is, I know when I graduated, which was a very, very long time ago, in my first job, I was invited to go and do a week's course, a whole week on Excel, just to learn a residential course as well. I mean, can you believe it? That, you know, how many years ago is that? 20 years ago that somebody would send you on a week's course to learn Excel. That would never happen right now. That would never happen today. The world is changing at such a pace. What we really, really need to do is build children's inner core. A lot of that's about grit and resiliency, but also their creativity, you know, and their motivation to learn and to learn independently, and to also know that you're not going to learn 100% in one go, that you need to learn by doing, and that you need to learn by failing. And I'm going to share another example again from the STEAM school. So not the STEAM school, that's my business, from the studio school, the game school that I set up. So when we created that school, it was intended to be a school for 300 students, quite small, really. And our first intake was 150 students. So budget-wise, we didn't have a full complement of staff. We just had 50% what we needed in that first year to balance the books. And we committed quite a lot of time to children, to project-based learning, and to children developing their own video game skills. And, you know, and we brought in some expert staff, you know, people who previously worked in the video game sector. Myself as kind of that core bridge between industry and our teachers, and then also a lead kind of technical computer science coding teacher. But because everybody was doing it, because we had this full 100, and, you know, every student was going to learn video games, that meant every teacher had to be involved in teaching video games. Even if they were an RE teacher or a science teacher or an art teacher, we all had to get involved. So for the first 2 terms, so from September to December, it all worked wonderfully, because for that term we were all learning about the video game sector. We had lots of industry speakers, master classes. Everybody learned, teachers and students alongside each other. And then we got to the January, and the children had to create their own video games, but 80% of the staff didn't even know where to begin. So what we did was we created a website with, if you've never created a video game, this is where you start. If you've already had a play around, here's an intermediate level. And if you want to be professional, give these websites a go. And off they went. And we had to become facilitators, coaches, mentors, rather than subject experts. And what an amazing experience that was for the students and for the teachers as well. So I can remember times when students would come to us and they would say, oh, we've all fallen out in our team. We all hate each other. We don't have anything, you know, and we go, well, you've got a mentor meeting in 24 hours, so you need to get yourself sorted. Or they'd say things like, we've lost everything. And we'd say, well, what have you learned? You know, and our industry mentors were brilliant, because, you know, we were in quite an old warehouse building. So I had to take them up in the lift to the top floor to meet the children for the mentor meetings. And they'd get in and I'd say, right, okay, well, you know, all your team's fallen out, or they've done this and they do that, you know, all this drama's happened and they've lost the work and whatever. And they'd be like, yeah, Jade, don't worry, we'll sort this out, because this is real life. This what happens in real life. Things don't go to plan. People fall out with each other. We have technical disasters. But actually, it's what happens next is where the real learning begins. So for me, you know, I want children, in order to be ready for the future, and actually the future's here already, is we do really need to build up the their inner core of resiliency, creativity, being comfortable with failure, knowing what to do when you don't know what to do next, you know, where to start. All of that is so important. Again, something that I took away from the video games experience, which I think is relevant for all industries, is that students need to have that blend of creative subjects and technical skills. And it's the blending of those two, you know, kind of disciplines where STEAM works brilliantly.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, having children who can walk into a room of coders, they might not be coders themselves, but they can at least converse and understand each other, is brilliant. Equally, we want coders to understand, you know, other members of development, of the development teams, you know, needs, requirements, wants. Everybody needs to be able to communicate in a way that, you know, helps us to develop great products and services. So yes, so for me, it's about developing that inner core, it's about resiliency, and it's about that magic combination of creative and technical skills together.
Wow. Jade, I think I really do want to pick up on a few elements that you mentioned that for me are extremely important here. The first one would be, and the analogy is pretty clear, right? We are teaching kids still in this traditional model things that they're not going to apply. And what's happening is that what you're saying is, well, teachers and admin staff, hang in there. You're not going to be teaching things that the kids are not going to apply. But actually what you're going to do is that you're going to learn what you're teaching them, whether it's your subject or not. And that's fantastic because you're having this transversal community that becomes so much stronger than actually everyone is in a silo. I'm teaching science, and yeah, I mean, technology might be a vector, but it's not something that I need, right? Because I'm sticking to my class and that's it. And the history teacher would say the same. And then we have completely different people specializing in their own subject, and that's it, right? And by broadening this thinking, we're really seeing a collaboration across not only the student body, but also the staff and the faculty. So that, first of all, chapeau, because I think it's a great mindset that you've introduced there. Second thing, picking up on that topic of the mindset, I think this is great because I think one thing that we entrepreneurs have is that mindset that you can share with entrepreneurs around the world, and it's exactly those skills that you're mentioning: resilience, treating life as it comes. You can plan one thing, but it's extremely rare that things are going to go according to plan, right? So you're actually embedding that entrepreneurial mindset in your education. And this is not something that is happening in many schools. To be honest, the entrepreneurship path is rather the second path, right? They train you to go into enterprise and to actually become an employee. And then if you do create something, well, that's fine, but it's not the core of many schools. So that I really, really like a lot. And then the very last thing I would like to pick up on what you mentioned, and I'm seeing your logo behind you, and it's a very good reflection of where you were mentioning having programmers mixing with other kind of disciplines. And that's the same transition you're having in terms of colors, which is that you might be yourself an expert in something, but you also need the complementary profiles. And that's how you're building something very strong. You're building an ecosystem that you can rely on, and making sure that it's not because I'm a programmer that I don't have communication skills, which is the typical perception, right? And in reality, if you're widening those that spectrum and opening it to acquiring different skills that are, as you say, lifelong learning skills, and something that we are going to have in real life, that's it. I mean, hopefully we can see a lot more people being involved in fields that maybe were not that accessible to them before, and actually bridging that gap, which is very strong still in STEM or STEAM related subjects. So once again, big congrats on that, because it's very powerful what you're building.
Thank you. Thank you.
To pick up on, just to take that forward, because I think, I see the same thing in it, and just to kind of bring it forward onto the next, I guess, logical step here is when we're talking about, as Alejandra mentioned, creating an ecosystem. I'm thinking about what wider system that ecosystem is within. And an interesting comment that we heard just in an earlier conversation was about STEAM being a Trojan horse for change, because all of the stuff that when you talk about the future of education, you talk about, getting rid of the silos, transversal, project-based or problem-based learning, collaborative, working towards a common goal, all that kind of stuff that is embedded in the way that STEAM functions. And of course, it's coming into the schools, but within a system where subjects are separate. And the young learners are going home and they're excitedly telling their parents, this is what I did today, this is what I learned. And they're like, wow, I've never seen them so energized about learning and so aware of the learning process, because they've come through design thinking and stuff like that. And the teachers are obviously witnessing this as well. And I'm wondering, what would you say to is it possible that you think STEAM could be a force for change bottom up in education?
I think that's a really, really difficult one. So first of all, I think in the past year, what the pandemic and kind of learning at home has gives an opportunity is it's really magnified, I think, where we're at in terms of we are still very much in that silo-based education, particularly here in the UK, in UK schools. I think what that has done has really shone a light on where we are at, and particularly for parents, lots of parents, I think, as a result of really getting stuck in a bit more detail with what their children are learning at school. Albeit at home, it's a little bit different. But I think parents will will increasingly see parents demanding something different for their children. In America, that is already happening. There's a real kind of swell of what they're calling micro schools and pandemic pods, where parents want small schools, project-based learning, self-directed learning. So all of that's happening over in the US. What I've seen here in the UK is an increasing number of virtual schools as well. Again, with those, those schools are offering a slightly different model, really, of the core curriculum and something else that's a bit more creative and and innovative. So what I hope is that through everything that teachers have experienced through the past year, they've really had to upscale, embrace technology in a way, and and in such a huge, such a short space of time, that might act as a bit of a Trojan horse as well, because I think technology is such a huge enabler for STEAM, for us, to invite teachers to design curriculums that give students a bit more freedom, that are more personalised. So hopefully that will help. But I think, there has to be kind of a real systematic change to where we're at in order to see big change. And certainly if you look around the globe, places like China, in the Middle East, in Asia, there is a recognition that strategically STEAM is the best way to prepare children for careers, for future careers in science and technology. But we haven't yet seen that in this country, and we need to see it, I think, if we want to keep a pace with global learning.